Hello everyone, welcome to yet another session by Scaler. And in today's session, we're going to look into data engineering. Before we move on and understand what will be covered in this session, make sure you subscribe to our channel and also hit the bell icon so that you don't miss our upcoming videos. And also, if you want to learn from industry experts for free, different technologies and frameworks, you can check out the free masterclasses we conduct, and the link is provided in the description box below. Now let's look into the topics which are going to be covered in this particular session. To start off with, we'll be looking into the scope of data engineering to understand if the market is available for you to get a job in data engineering itself. After that, we'll look into how to get into FAANG for a data engineer because most people's ambition is to get into a top tech company. And then we'll be taking you through a demonstration of how to design your own data pipeline because that is necessary to be a data engineer. That will cover all the basics necessary to learn and understand about a data pipeline. After that, we'll also look into the harsh reality of being a data engineer because once you get into data engineering, that is also necessary. And finally, we are going to look into how to crack a data engineering interview because that is necessary for every single person. A fresher to advanced, you would still have to crack a data engineering interview to get into a startup or even a top tech company. So these are the things we will be covering in this particular session. Now let's get started with it.
So data engineering has become the fastest growing job profile after 2020, and in the recent time, majority of people are showing their interest to move into this job profile. But you should also understand that why this job profile is getting so much popularity, and you need to understand what actually data engineers are doing in the company. So nowadays we all know the companies are heavily dependent on data driven business decisions, and in order to take those kind of decisions they need to process the data. And in the world of internet, we know how fastly this data is growing. Every day we are processing terabytes, petabytes of data from different sources, different real-time devices, batch type of data, each kind of data processing we are doing. And based on those historical stats, these companies are trying to get some meaningful insights and able to compete with their competitors in the market. And that is the main crucial part where data engineers play an critical role. So I always call data engineers as a frontliner in the company. Doesn't matter whatever company it is, if they are working in a big data related solution, data engineers will always be there because they are the frontliners. Their job responsibility is to create the scalable data pipelines. So what does this scalable data pipeline means? You as a data engineer is creating a mechanism which is scalable to pull data from different sources. It can be anything, any type of data, structured, semi-structured, unstructured, and you will be having some business logics in place, and those will be directly coming from your leaders, your stakeholders and customer, that we need to aggregate this data in this fashion. That's how we will be able to get meaningful insights of it. So this is the transformation part, and once that is available, you are dumping that data into the downstream system, which is the actual thing or actual result your company wanted from your side. And whatever profiles you have heard so far, data scientists, analysts, BI engineers, whosoever it is, they are dependent on the responsibilities of data engineers. If they don't have the transform data available with them, they cannot represent data, they cannot create dashboards, they cannot create like machine learning models or anything which is related to complex data mysteries. They cannot solve it. So data engineers are the one who will having those kind of skill sets. They will be good at programming, they will be good at the software engineering skills, and they are the one who can create those complex engineering system which is processing the data on scale. For most of the multinational IT companies, India alone is their first priority to find the talented working professional, and that is the reason in last 4-5 years, state of data engineering in India has improved a lot. And before I start with interesting stats, make sure you like the video, and if you are new to our channel, then hit the subscribe button and press the notification icon. And if you have any query related to data engineering, put it in the comment section and we will answer it. So these stats can be divided in 4 segments. First is market, second is salary, third is jobs, and fourth is key skills. So first, let's look at the market conditions for data engineering. So So the size of data engineering market in India is 18.2 billion US dollars in 2022. This is predicted to grow at a rate of 36.7% in the next 5 years to reach 86.9 billion US dollars by 2027. The number of open jobs for data engineers is 1.8 times higher than for data scientists. Why job openings for data engineers are higher than data scientists? Let's understand it with a simple example. So let's say there are 10-15 companies who are working on big data solutions. So it's not necessary that every company is trying to solve complex data mysteries. For an example, forecasting related use cases, predictive models, and anything which is very complex in terms of data science. Because there can be a simple use case where you need to bring data from different sources and apply some transformation, and the companies are trying to visualize that data, like get some insights from the historical data so that they can compare their growths from the last quarter, what was the revenue, what was the decrease in the revenue and the sales part. These are very basic stats, and there is no complex data analysis is required here. There is nothing which is dedicated towards the data science profile. So even if that company hires a data engineer who is actually responsible for these kind of job activities, pulling data from different sources, doing the ETL kind of stuff, that would be good enough. And that's why in modern data world, the openings for the data engineers are much higher than any other data related job profile. So banking sector has employed the highest share of data engineers at 37.7% among all non-IT sectors. So we know about different sectors like banking, healthcare, telecom, aviation. So all these sectors together are heavily dependent on the data. But the sector which is extensively using this data part, that is banking. And why? So it is actually related to the monetary part. Every minute, every second, there are billions of transactions are happening across the globe. So in order to handle that much of a scale of data, definitely you need some mechanism in between so that you can analyze this data. So for these banking organizations, their customers are their actual assets. And in the banking domain, there are many risk factors involved. Any kind of fraud can happen with your debit card and credit card. And if the bank itself is not able to detect it as soon as possible, then definitely they will lose their customers. They won't be able to maintain that trust level. And that's why these banking organizations want data professionals like data engineers, data scientists, and data analysts to come together and work on these kind of big data solutions which can detect these kind of frauds, and they can try to minimize the risk as much as possible. And that's why this sector has employed so many number of data engineers. The highest share, which is 30.8% of data engineers, have a work experience of 3 to 6 years in data engineering domain. So that's what about the market condition of data engineering profile in India. And now let's talk more about the salary aspect. So by 2022, the median salary offered to data engineers in India is 17 lakhs per annum. And the data engineers in the e-commerce industry command the highest median salary, which is 28.5 lakhs per annum. But what is the reason that data engineers who are working in the e-commerce domain are getting this much of package? And the reason is very simple, the business logic. So when we talk about the e-commerce platform, we have few popular global names like Amazon and Walmart, and few Indian companies like Flipkart and Meesho. On daily basis, they are selling the products which are of our daily needs. So as a customer on daily basis, we are visiting these platforms, we are purchasing the products, and which means there will be a traffic on their platform. More traffic means more data. And that is why the companies which are working in this e-commerce domain, they want to hire data engineers who can work on these kind of ETL pipelines and who can create those kind of scalable pipelines in order to analyze the data, in order to create real-time streaming pipelines to capture the user activities. And that is why these companies who are working in this e-commerce domain are paying highest packages to the data engineers as well. So these were some really cool stats about the salary specifically for the data engineers. And now let's talk about the job opportunities which are available in the India by 2022. The total number of open jobs for data engineers as of the last week of May 2022 is 36,457. The e-commerce domain has emerged as the largest job provider among key sectors with a total of 3,796 open jobs, followed by banking sector at 3,728 open job positions for the data engineers. There are more than 10,000 jobs in the market for data engineers who can command a salary of 10 to 15 lakhs per annum. Open jobs for entry-level roles commanding salaries around 6 lakhs per annum stand at 4,722. I know this fact is really motivating for the freshers because I have been receiving this query from their side that companies are not preferring freshers for the data engineering profile. And that was absolutely true 5-6 years back. But now you can see that how much data engineering has changed in India in last 5-6 years. And that's why these numbers or these many job openings are still available in the market. So the only thing which is required from the fresher side is to work on their skills. You need to focus on the core skill sets of the big data. Try to work on some really good projects which are around the data engineering, so that you can create a strong portfolio, and whatever open job opportunities in the market, you will definitely get the interview opportunity if you are having the right skill sets. More than 2 in 5 jobs, which is equivalent to 44.9%, are listed for data engineers with 5 to 10 years of working experience. So that was about the job opportunities related to the data engineering profile. Now let's try to focus on some amazing stats related to the key skills. So more than 92% data engineers are preferring Python language in order to create the data pipelines. And this is absolutely true because Python has become the language of data, and there are multiple reasons for it. First, Python language is very easy to understand. Even someone is coming from non-programming background, Python language is very easy to understand because of its simple syntax. There is no complexity, you can easily code into it. And the second most important point, Python provides a great support for amazing data exploration libraries. So anytime when you are working on data pipelines and anything related to data analysis, you can use these libraries quickly and simply analyze the data. And that's why Python has become a very popular language in the big data domain. In terms of users of the cloud, more than 39% of data engineering professionals can work in Azure than in other technologies. So nowadays, understanding of cloud has been treated as a primary skills for the data engineers because most of the companies are shifting to the cloud, and that's how data engineers are supposed to create cloud agnostic data pipelines. And in the market, we have 3 big players: AWS, Azure, and GCP. Although you can start with any of the cloud platform, but in the recent years, we have seen that Azure is taking over the market. Although its big competitor is AWS, but still Azure is coming up with great big data related services, which helps data engineer to create agnostic cloud-based data pipelines. And that's why more and more data engineers in the starting phase of their career, they are preferring Azure as a cloud platform than AWS or GCP. So SQL is the most popular skill set among data engineers, with 100% of them being able to work on it. So SQL is one of the most important skill set for all of the data professionals. It's not about the data engineering, it is about the data scientist, data analyst, business analyst, whosoever is in the big data domain. SQL is their main important skill set. And I can tell you this fact, in your interviews, especially the data engineering interviews, approximately 35% weightage will be given to the SQL. So if you are not practicing SQL in the right direction and you are just stick to the basic SQL, that is not gonna help. You need to explore the advanced side of the SQL as well, so that you can get a good grip on it, because it is something which is required to represent the data, to query the data. Even when you will be coding the data pipelines, you will be writing the transformation, you need to interact with the databases, you need to make a connection there and write some logical queries who can pull the data. Similarly, let's say you had a data warehouse and you want to analyze some data, you need to query it, and for that you need to write a SQL. So that's why this is the most demanding skill set, and most of the data engineering are preferring it to have it as their prime skill set. So we have talked about all the interesting facts about the state of data engineering in India, and now you can also understand it's important that why data engineering profile is becoming so much popular nowadays. So the first thing which is really important to start your journey in the data engineering, that is programming languages. So I have seen lots of people talk about this thing that for the data related profiles, programming is not needed at all. So I would say this is completely wrong, because the data engineering is a kind of job profile where lots of engineering work is actually required. Like you will be creating data pipelines, you will be writing custom codes. So that's why understanding of any of one programming languages is really, really important. So what kind of languages you can prefer in the data engineering domain? So there are three languages which are really popular. First is Python, second is Java, and third is Scala. So now you might be thinking which one should be preferred. So if you want to take my opinion, I would definitely recommend the Python, and there is a solid reason behind it, because under the umbrella of big data, there are multiple job profiles, including data engineering, data analyst, data scientist, machine learning engineer, and mostly they are using this Python languages because Python language has a strong support for multiple data manipulation libraries. That is the prime reason. So let's say after 4 or 5 years, you want to move from data engineering to data scientist, AI, ML related thing, then it would be really, really easy for you if you have started your journey with Python itself. Now, for the college students, I know like you might be working on languages C, C++, right? But still you want to make your career into the data engineering, you want to start with that, then like at this moment you need to switch your target from C, C++ to Python, Java and Scala, and that would be my recommendation. Okay, so now coming to the second important point, let's say you started with the Python programming. So because your work is actually related to data manipulation, so definitely there should be some libraries and you should have a good hands-on on that part as well. So in Python, there are three very, very popular libraries. First is pandas, second is numpy, and third is matplotlib. So when you start with the Python programming, so after learning all the basics, let's say if else, looping, variables, and multiple other things, and its prime data structures, then your target should be to focus on these libraries. Like you can get some dummy data and try to manipulate it with the help of these libraries, because the pandas and numpy are mainly created for that one, where you can process your data, you can just do some operations like joins, group by, and you can do the data exploration part. Similarly, the matplotlib is basically for the visualization. You can create some basic kind of graphs like line chart or pie chart or bar chart. These kind of things you can do with the help of matplotlib library. All right, so coming to the third part, and that is the operating system and the scripting part. So I'm pretty sure in your college time, if you are coming from the CS background or somehow let's say non-CS, then at least you would have listened these terms like Linux, Unix, and these kind of operating systems. So mainly when you work in the IT industry and a full-fledged production level application, be it anything, let's say web application or any like data engineering related pipelines. So ultimately what will be happening, you will be operating on these servers, right? And we know there is a GUI as well, like which is in our laptop, where you can point onto different files with the help of mouse and anything, right? And you don't need to write any commands specific to any operation. But that is not the case with these Linux and Unix based machine. Whatever you want to perform, even if you want to copy a single file from one source to other destination, you definitely need to write a one command. So that's the thing which is happening in the data engineering as well. Mostly whatever data you will be getting, that might come from different servers. For an example, FTP, SFTP, right? So these kind of servers will be there, and let's say your clients are dropping the files, the input files on that server particular location, and from there you are trying to consume that data and then trying to process it. So you should be having a really good understanding of how to operate on Linux, like the basic commands, how to look for different files, copy, moving, and how to even extract the data, multiple other amazing things to automate the things as well. Like if you are trying to transfer files from one location to another location on time to time basis, right? You can write the cron jobs, which will be a kind of scheduled job in your application, which is doing this file movement. And similarly, the shell scripting part is also very much important. So when we talk about these Linux and Unix based machine, they understand this part as well, like shell scripting, whatever you want to perform, let's say multiple operations together within a one single program, then you can write those commands in one single script, and that is basically known as shell scripting. It has its own way of executing the things, and it has its own syntax. So you should definitely learn it, because that would be really helpful when you will be automating your data pipelines. Okay, so now the next point, which is really important, understanding of data structures and algorithm. And honestly speaking, there are some myths about it as well, and I will try to burst those myths. But before that, I will talk about how much data structures and algorithm actually required in this data engineering domain, and even to crack your interviews, plus what all topics you need to majorly focus on. And again, whatever I'm explaining, completely based on my interview experiences, because I have appeared in multiple interviews for different product-based companies, including Google, Facebook, Uber, Amazon, Microsoft, many more. So based on that experience, I'm going to tell you what all topics you actually need to focus. So the thing which is important in the data engineering from the interviews perspective, the arrays, strings, linked list, stack, queue. Dynamic programming is something which is also very much important, but you don't need to jump onto the hard level of the dynamic programming or the tough part of that. And similarly, there will be questions related to tree and graphs, and mostly it will be on very basic levels. Like they can ask the traversal related thing, or any like algorithm which is existing, so they can ask questions related to that, but they won't be jumping onto the hardest level of the trees and graphs as well. Now the myth which I am going to burst here, that you need to be a like pro coder, or let's say you need to be have a really good experience in the competitive programming in order to crack the DSA related rounds for data engineering domain. So that is completely wrong. So based on my experience, this is the thing I have observed for the data engineering related profile. Only you need to focus on the DSA part till the medium level, not more than that. Like easy medium till medium level. Beyond that, those companies won't be asking any question, because data engineering is more about your skills for the big data processing. So in the interviews, there will be multiple technical rounds where they will focus on your designing skills for the pipeline, not like again and again judging you on the DSA or hard level of DSA questions. So don't worry about that one. If you are someone who's having an average understanding of this DSA part, then the data engineering profile is good fit for you. So now coming to the next point, which is understanding of database management system. So this is the subject in your graduations as well, right? In your graduation, you would have read about the database management system. So in the data engineering role, right, your day-to-day activities will revolve around these things, right? The databases, the tables, querying the data, these things. So you should have a really good understanding of the important things in the DBMS, like what is the transaction, what is the concurrency, the ER diagrams, the different kind of indexings, hashings, right? And multiple important concepts related to the DBMS. Definitely you need to focus on it. Sometimes these concepts will be like very much important from the interview perspective as well, because interviewers will indirectly ask you these questions where they can ask like, can you optimize this query performance, right? So in that case, if you don't have these understanding like how databases works under the like hood, then in that case you won't be able to clear those rounds, because you cannot pinpoint those particular optimization techniques. So that's why DBMS part is very much important. Now coming to the SQL part. So SQL is something which is definitely really important, and from the interview perspective, SQL will hold at least 30 to 35% of weightage. And in data engineering, not only data engineering, because we have multiple job profiles as well, like the data science, data analyst, and business analyst. So our roles and responsibilities will be more towards on the data representation as well, querying it in a proper manner and just pulling out those meaningful insights from the data. And that's the point where SQL will be really helpful. So it doesn't matter if you are a fresher or the experienced candidate, the expectation for the SQL from the interviews would be really high. So you have to be really good at it, not the basic part of the SQL, like medium level of SQL as well, plus the advanced things which are available in SQL for querying, that would be also needed for your interviews and for your day-to-day activities as well. So in SQL, what all things you majorly need to focus on from the data querying perspective, like the simple table creation operation, select operation, how to apply the where clauses, ordering of data, and then comes the group bys and multiple type of joins are there, how to write the subqueries, common table expression like with clause, and case when operation with group bys, and most important is the window functions in SQL, because these are something, let's say you are going into the interviews, then you should definitely expect at least 1 to 2 questions which will be related to the window functions. So that's why I'm saying SQL is really important. Okay, so far whatever I have talked about, that was actually your building blocks, right? Without understanding of the programming, DSAs and everything, you cannot even move into the data engineering part. But to become the actual data engineer, the core understanding of big data is definitely very important. But I won't tell you that you should directly jump onto this framework and that framework. I would ask you to start your journey with the basics as well. First, you need to understand the terminologies. What are the important big data related terminologies? For an example, like what are the 5 V's of the big data? There are different file formats available in the big data, or whenever we process the files or the incoming source data. So popular file formats like the JSON, CSV, Avro, Parquet, and similarly there are different types of data as well. Like sometimes it can be unstructured, sometimes it can be structured and semi-structured, right? So you need to understand these basic terminologies, and most important, how this distributed computation work, what is commodity hardware, what is the cluster, right? And how this distributed storage works, what kind of frameworks available for that. So that understanding is very much important, because without that, you won't even able to understand any important framework which is available in the big data. So that's why please focus on the terminologies first and then jump onto the advanced part. The next part is the understanding of data warehousing. So data warehousing, people who don't know about it, that is something where we will be keeping our transform data for the analysis part, right? So data warehousing also have its own concept, like how to store the normalized and denormalized data in a specific form, and how multiple tables should be connected with each other, what should be the proper relationship with them, and what is the OLAP, what is the OLTP, what is the fact table, what is the dimension table, what is the difference between star schema and snowflake schema. So these are the some important things which are available in the data warehousing concepts. And I do remember my interview experiences where interviewers were directly asking these questions, like, can you design the data warehouse for food delivery application? Can you design a data warehouse for the ride applications like Uber and Ola? So these kind of questions will be there in front of you in your designing round and data modeling round. So please focus on the data warehousing as well. Okay, so now coming to the most important part, the understanding of important big data related frameworks. So previously we covered the terminologies part, and now I will pinpoint what are important big data related frameworks are available in the industry and what all things you need to cover in that particular framework. So first, to start with the base part, that is the Hadoop. Hadoop is something which is really important, and you need to deep dive into it. For the framework perspective, you need to understand its architecture, how Hadoop actually works, what are its important components. so that when you will appear in the interviews during your design rounds, where interviewers will ask you questions related to pipeline designing, and they can ask you that what kind of framework you will be using. So if you don't have the clear cut understanding of these kind of frameworks and what are their architectures, then you won't be able to answer those questions, right? So now the big question is what all things to cover in the Hadoop. So there are three main components of Hadoop. First is the HDFS, second is the MapReduce, and third is the resource manager, which is Yarn, right? And I know Hadoop is something which is a old school technology, but it is definitely the base for all the frameworks which are built on top of it. So in the Hadoop part, we don't need to focus on MapReduce coding, but we need to understand the MapReduce functionalities, because this is something which has been inherited and being used as the main concept of distributed computation. So focus on HDFS, understand the working and functionalities of MapReduce, and how these resource managers like Yarn work together for the job scheduling, resource allocation, and these aspects. Now talking about the most demanded framework for the data engineers, that is Apache Spark. So Apache Spark is something which is definitely 100 times faster than Hadoop, and a very good fit framework for the batch data processing and real-time data processing as well. That's why Spark is something which will be treated as your core skill if you are moving into data engineering. And in interviews, right, there will be multiple questions related to it, right? And why? Because Spark is something which is really important, first of all. And second thing, it's different component. So there are three main components of Apache Spark. First is the Spark core, second is the Spark streaming, and third is the Spark SQL. So why it becomes very much important? So let's say you are a core programmer, you know how to code the things, writing the custom code using Python, Java, and Scala. Then definitely you can use the Spark core functionalities like its inbuilt libraries, method, and you can code the thing. But Spark comes with a very amazing thing, an amazing component named as Spark SQL. So if you are someone who don't have any understanding related to the programming and all, and you know SQL, right? So whatever logic you want to implement, you can write it in the form of SQL, and you can just use those Spark SQL methods and compute your things. So that's why Apache Spark is very much important. Now coming to the third important framework in the big data, that is Apache Hive. So Apache Hive is basically a kind of data warehousing service, and that is also very widely used by different companies for their analytical reporting. So there are multiple concepts in Hive like the partitioning, bucketing, how to load the data in the Hive tables, internal tables, external tables, concept of views, right? So these are the things which you actually need to cover in the Hive. And there are multiple other frameworks as well. So based on different use cases, you can identify, you can do some POCs and try to figure out which framework is good fit for use case. And let's say you want to do a pure real-time data streaming, and you want to create pipelines which are completely depend on the real-time data, then you can explore Apache Flink as well. That is the tool which is really growing, and in my current organization, we are using this tool as well for the real-time data processing. Okay, so the next thing is the schedulers or workflow managers. And what are these things? So let's say you have created your data pipelines where you were using multiple sources and you were consuming data from there, and then you had, let's say, Apache Spark or Hadoop in between, you process something and then dump data into the downstream system, right? So these pipelines are sometimes like manually operated, and there can be multiple data pipelines which are somehow interdependent on each other. So definitely we should have some frameworks or kind of workflow managers which can manage these pipelines with pure dependencies and the data backfilling operations, these things. So in the data engineering, or you can say the big data world, there are 2-3 workflow managers or schedulers which are really popular. First is Apache Airflow, second is the Azkaban, and third is Apache NiFi. So these are the top 3, or you can say the popular schedulers which are in the industry. So you can focus on that. Now talking about the next thing, which is understanding of NoSQL databases. So NoSQL is something which is very much important into this big data domain. Why? Because we cannot handle the data or like whatever volume we will be operating in the big data world with the traditional databases like MySQL or Postgres. And in order to get that partition tolerance or high availability or consistency, we will be needing those kind of databases which are not only SQL but kind of no SQL databases. So there are multiple available NoSQL databases based on different use cases and based on the CAP theorem as well. So why I am taking this name CAP theorem, so that you can explore it, why we talk about it, and how it can be really beneficial to figure out which NoSQL database is good fit for our use case. So if you talk about the important databases like the Cassandra, Elasticsearch, HBase, MongoDB, these are the well-known and very, very popular NoSQL databases. Okay, so the third last thing is the messaging queues. So if you remember when I was talking about the real-time data streaming pipelines with the help of Spark or the Apache Flink. So whenever we will be working in the real-time world or the real-time data streaming, so from the source end, we should have some mechanism or we should have something in place which can collect my data, because the rate of production and rate of consumption won't be matched like maximum number of the time. So you should be having some mechanism in place which can hold your data for some time and your consumer can consume it. So that's why we need some kind of queuing mechanism or message queues in between. And in the big data world or even in any real-time data applications, Apache Kafka is something which is really, really popular as the messaging queues. Okay, so now talking about the second last thing, which is the dashboarding tools. So the dashboarding is something which is not a mandatory skill set for the data engineers, but it is always good to have, because sometimes what will happen, let's say you completed your pipeline and you ended up with the transform data. So you need to also analyze it, right? Whatever your end users asked for it, you are populating the same thing or not, and that's how you need to visualize it as well. So that's why the understanding of dashboarding tools is also very much important. And there are three major important you can say dashboarding tools which are really, really popular, but there are multiple and many other dashboarding tools available, but I'll talk about the three. So first is the Tableau, second is the Power BI, and third is the ClickView or ClickSense, you can say. So these are the top three popular dashboarding tools, and like it is always a good to have understanding related to it. Okay, so the last and very, very much important skill set to become a good data engineer as well, that is understanding of the cloud platforms. So we all know, right? Companies are shifting from on-premises things to the cloud, right? They are operating their things on the cloud, and we have three major players in the cloud technologies. First is AWS, second is Azure, third is GCP. So all are providing services related to big data, and we can use those cloud platforms to create cloud agnostic data pipelines without even using any on-premises thing, right? So that's why if you are having a good understanding of any of the cloud platform, that would be really, really great. And again, from the freshers perspective, I'm not saying that it is a mandatory skill, but it will be definitely a good to have a skill set, and your profile will stand out from the crowd. Because let's say you have covered some specific cloud platform, for an example AWS, and you know all important services which are being used for the data pipeline creation. So companies will definitely prioritize your profile and you will get interviewed for sure. And cloud is definitely the future and you need to focus on it. And let's say you start with any of the cloud platform, so make sure you are not just working on the theoretical aspect or you are trying to understand it with the theories. Try to do some practical work as well, because these companies provide some free accounts and free services as well, which you can use and play around it.
So the first point is developing customer driven application. So the initial success of any application depends completely on few important aspects, like how easily that application can be accessed, the eye-catching UI, bug-free applications. These are the very important factors which will give the best of the best experience to the users, and that is the actual thing you want to deliver. But the question is, as a developer, how would you know that what is the actual need of the customers and how you can improve your application? And that is the part where behavioral analysis will come into the picture, and that is how big data will create a big impact here. Because with the help of that data or feedback, because as soon as you launch your application, the users will start using it and they will keep on sending the feedbacks that what kind of feature they are liking, what thing is best working in that application. And once you have all those feedbacks with you, as a developer, you can actually point out those things which you need to fix in your application. It can be any bug or it can be a new feature development. So that's how, with the help of feedback and behavioral analysis, you will be able to deliver the actual things which are required by your customers, and that's how you are improving the user experience. Second point, custom notification for the marketing. So nowadays companies are focusing a lot in innovative marketing ideas, and custom notification is one of them. So nowadays we all are using different applications for different products like food delivery, shopping, and these applications are like, again, mobile applications. It can be Android and iOS application. So this custom notification part has become a very innovative idea of the marketing. So the best example is, like, few time back I was using the Zomato and Swiggy applications, which are basically for food delivery, and these applications keep on sending custom notification to their users, and these notifications are sometimes very funny. So you will definitely enjoy that application, that experience, first of all. An example could be like, let's say for a long time you haven't ordered anything on Swiggy or Zomato, so those notifications will be like, long time no see, this kind of stuff, funny stuff you will keep on getting, and that's how they are improving the user experience. And that custom notification is a kind of reminder for the user that it's been a very long, now it's time to order something from Swiggy or Zomato. So that is how they are improving their marketing game, and they are even converting more selling points. And second best example, again from Swiggy. So last year what they did, they again adopted a very innovative marketing idea. In the year end, what they did, they analyzed your order history, and based on that they prepared an annual report card, like the way we get the report cards in our school time. Similarly, they prepared it, like the order history, how much you ordered, the scoring, and all these things. So that was definitely an innovative and funny idea to just engage with the users and customer, and that is how they are improving it. This custom notification has become a game changer for most of the product based application, and that is how you can even see the impact of big data. So let's say the Swiggy or Zomato are not analyzing the data they have, that is the historical data, which is kind of cold storage. So if you are not analyzing it, you are not using it for innovative purposes, that means you will be not able to improve that user experience time to time with the help of these application. And that is how we can see the impact of big data. So let's say Swiggy, Zomato, or any other product based application is not analyzing the data which they have in their databases, then they won't be able to innovate in their market strategies. Now let's talk about the third point, real-time data analysis. So today's world is very fast, and to stay ahead in the competition, it becomes really crucial for the companies to analyze the rapidly changing patterns in the real time. And we will be only able to do that if our applications are capable enough to capture the data in real time and process it too. So let's try to understand this real-time data analysis with the help of two simple examples. First, let's say there is a lifestyle or fitness application which keep on taking users' data like eating, sleeping cycle, and other patterns. And this data will actually help the app developers to create user-centric applications. And these improved features will help the users as well to adopt the better lifestyle. This data, which will be captured by these fitness application, can even be used by the medical professionals so that they can get to know more about you, your lifestyle, and appropriate measures will be taken. Now let's take another example of the safety features in applications like Uber. So if you are using these ride hailing applications like Uber and Ola, then you would have seen this feature where, let's say, you took a ride, and at given point of time, if your driver took a pause for more than 2-3 minutes, then instantly you will get a notification from the Uber that what is the reason your ride is stopped. And if you feel something, you feel uncomfortable, and you think that you want to send a SOS notification to your primary contacts, then you can instantly use that notification, and that message will be broadcasted so that your safety is ensured. And how Uber is actually doing it, so that is being done with the help of real-time data analysis. So their application keep on tracking the current location of the driver, and as soon as there is a unusual activity or a pause of more than 2-3 minutes, Uber will instantly send the notification so that appropriate measures can be taken. And next point is more sales conversions via personalized recommendations. So these applications are actual selling point for these companies, and this is the point where big data is actually helping these applications to do the predictive analysis. So let's understand this with the help of practical examples. So let's suppose these e-commerce application, Amazon, Flipkart, Walmart. So as a customers, we will definitely would like to purchase something, and sometimes what happened, we saw a product, we quickly added it into a cart or wish list, and let's say after that we forgot about it and we never purchased it, and that is still maintained in our cart history or wish list. So at that time, what these platforms would like to do, they will try to send the notification that something is in your cart or wish list so that you can again recheck it. And that is how they are doing more sales conversions, because something was in their cart, and as soon as you will get the reminder from these companies in the form of personalized recommendations, you will instantly go check out the cart and done the payment, and they are making more money. And next example is actually related to the OTT platforms like Netflix and Amazon Prime. So here how these platforms actually work, whatever activities we are doing, they are capturing it, they are storing it, they are trying to build some models on top of it, and that is actually the data analysis, so that they can find a pattern that what is your taste. So let's say today you watched an action movie and continuously for 2-3 days you watch those sort of movies. So after some time, even from the Netflix side, you will keep on getting those kind of personalized recommendation where you will get new notifications for those newly launched movies, action movies, so that they can retain their customers, and that will be their selling conversion as well. So as soon as you will see an interesting movie title or any favorite hero or the actor actresses, you will be eager to watch that movie, and that is how they are retaining their customers with the help of personalized recommendation engines. So the last point is improving overall application performance, and this is the most crucial part. So it doesn't matter how beautiful UI is, if as an application we are not able to scale at any given point of time, we are not able to scale the massive traffic, then we won't be able to compete with our rivals. And this is the part where big data is actually helping these applications to improve their performances. So how big data is actually helping these applications to improve their performances? Simple idea is the log analysis. So what happens whenever we develop our application, those applications will be hosted on some servers. And when we talk about the large scale of the traffic or concurrent user request, so there should be some mechanism so that we can log these requests or we can monitor this traffic. So as soon as there is a huge concurrent request, we can auto scale our application so that we can manage it and we can load balance all these things in order to provide a seamless experience to our users. So the best example of this scalability part is the OTT platform like Disney plus Hotstar. So if you remember that 2019 India New Zealand World Cup semi-final, that was the point where Hotstar actually did a commendable job. So more than 15 million plus concurrent requests were there. So just imagine this massive scale. If as a product they were not able to scale themselves, then that would have been a bad user experience. Their application would have been crashed as well. So as an application, now you can even imagine if you are able to visualize these logs or whatever traffic is coming into your system, how easily you can monitor that threshold value and you can auto scale that application. So that is how even big data is helping a lot to these applications to improve their performances, whether it is the health check of the servers and even to auto scale themselves whenever there is a concurrent user request on the system.
So being a data engineer, our actual role and responsibility is to design optimized, scalable and fault tolerant data pipelines. And based on different business use cases, sometimes you might be working on different data domains as well. Let's say you are working for an e-commerce company, then data would be related to the e-commerce. Let's say you are in the telecom, so you will be calling it as a telecom data domain. Similarly, healthcare, finance, banking, and multiple other data domains. So the very first step of designing the data pipelines is to understand these data domains in a correct manner. And this is a really crucial step. When we design the data pipelines, we invest our most of the time in this phase because understanding of the data domain is really important. In your organization, or let's say you are working for a client which belongs to a specific business, they might come to you with a specific problem statement. And being a data engineer, if you don't know about that particular data domain, you won't be even able to understand the important terminologies and like what kind of matrices they are expecting from this kind of data. So getting that understanding is important. Plus, this will also help you to identify what would be the multiple data sets you need to consume from the sources, what would be the important relationship among them, like the connection with the help of primary keys and foreign keys. And this will eventually help you to identify that what kind of columns or what kind of important data sets you need to bring into the system, because the end users or the clients sometimes will come up with a vague problem statement and they would expect you to bring every single data set. And being a data engineer, you always look forward for the optimization, scalability, and fault tolerance. And it's not recommended, or it's definitely a bad practice to bring the data sets, which is definitely not necessary. And if you don't understand the data domain, the relationship, and how these matrices are getting generated, then in that case, like without any knowledge, you are just bringing everything and you are adding extra cost in your project because it will be unnecessary data processing. So this is the very first step. Understand your data really well, and then the other technical steps will be involved while designing the data pipeline. So the second most important point while designing the data pipeline is the choice of the data sources. So while consuming the data or the data extraction process, data can come from multiple sources, sometimes the databases, distributed file system, and APIs. And I'll tell you why it is important to understand the data sources. So as we know, like data can come from multiple sources based on the type or based on the, let's say, OLAP, OLTP data or API related data. So we can consume data from multiple sources, and that will be completely depend on the businesses. Let's say they are using the MySQL database for their data storage. So you will be consuming the transactional data from there. And let's say you are working on a use case where you need to process the data which is coming from sensors, then you will be getting it from IoT devices. And let's say there is a web application which is generating some data for you, so you can consume it via APIs as well. So understanding the core capabilities of every data source is also very important, because that will help you to understand which kind of computation engine you need in between, which can easily connect with those data sources and pull the data from there. So if you don't understand what kind of data source you are going to use, probably you won't be able to come up with an efficient design. And also the important part is you need to understand how this data is getting populated on the source side as well, whether it is a real-time data or a batch data, or how it is getting stored there, the file formats, right? These kind of things you need to understand from the data source perspective, and that would be the initial step of your data extraction. So the third important step in the data pipeline design is to determine the data ingestion strategy. So in the data processing, there are majorly three important data ingestion strategies. First is incremental data load, second is the full load, third is absurd kind of load. And I will explain each of them one by one. So first, let's talk about the incremental data load. And when I'm talking about these data ingestion strategies, so it will again completely depend on your business use cases and how you are going to perform the analytical queries. So first, let's talk about the incremental data load. So in that case, what will happen, whatever data source you have picked, so based on some timestamp values, you will try to bring the data in smaller chunks. Let's say first time you just hit your data source at, let's say, 11 p.m. and till that point, whatever data was available in the data source, you pulled it and you dumped it into somewhere after the processing. And after, let's say 15 minutes, your pipeline again executed. So from 11 p.m. till 11:15 p.m., whatever updated or newly created data was present there, you just pulled it and processed it and then again dumped it into the downstream system. So this is the incremental load, like based on different timestamps, you are pulling the data and dumping it into the downstream system. Now talking about the second data ingestion strategy, which is full load. So in full load, it will mostly depend on the use case. If every day you want to process something, so in that case, what will happen? Like whatever data is available at your source end, so completely you will just erase your target table, which was previously loaded with some data, and whatever fresh data is available for current day, you will pull that entire data set, will process it and dump it into the downstream system. And the third strategy is upsert kind of data ingestion. So upsert kind of data ingestion, what will happen? This is also just a variation of incremental data load. So here what will happen? Let's say you pulled some data records and among them few records were already present in the target table because you processed these kind of records few days back, and that relation can be checked based on some primary keys. So if you find these kind of common records, what will happen? You will remove those old entries from the target table and whatever new record you have pulled, you will ingest it. So that is a kind of updation we are doing, or not. Let's say we are not deleting the records from the target table, we can update few values of it. And the two data ingestion strategies, the incremental and upsert kind of load, that is mainly designed for the historical data as well, because every day you are processing everything and you will be keeping it for some timestamp, let's say till 1 year and 2 year, you will be processing these incremental data. And this kind of ingestion strategy is needed when the analytics team want to analyze data per day basis, per hour, per week, something kind of this strategy. Then you need to the dump data into this form, like incremental or upsert kind of load. But let's say your analytics team is only concerned about for a specific range or the batch data, let's say 1 year or 1 day, 1 month, 6 months. So in that case, you will just pull the data for that entire time window which the analytics team has provided and will do the full data load. So that's how you can understand based on the use case which data ingestion strategy you need to pick for your data pipeline. So after completing these 3 steps, the 4th step will be to design the plan for the data processing. So far we know in the big data domain, we have multiple frameworks available for different kind of data processing. So the important data frameworks which are available, Hadoop is there, Spark is there, Flink is there. So based on the use case, like you want to do the batch processing and real-time processing, you need to decide which one is a good fit. And I will explain how you can decide it. So in this data design plan, or you can say data pipeline design plan, you will majorly focus on the choice of the data framework. So let's say you are concerned about the batch data processing only, then you should pick the kind of framework which is a right fit for it. For an example, there are 2 popular frameworks like the Hadoop, which is completely designed for the batch processing, and also you can leverage the Spark as well, which is the most demanded skill set for the data engineers as well. Let's say you are designing a near real-time data pipeline, then you can leverage the Spark streaming. And let's say you are trying to create a completely real-time data pipeline, then you can leverage the framework like Flink and along with the Apache Kafka. So based on the kind of data processing you are trying to do, you need to pick these kind of frameworks. And the second thing which you need to consider while designing the data plan or while designing the execution plan for these pipelines, that it should be completely scalable, completely optimized and fault tolerance. And how you can achieve it? If you know the exact comparison between all the big data frameworks like Hadoop, Spark, Flink. So based on the criticality of your data pipelines, you can pick whether this particular framework will help me to achieve the scalability part, the fault tolerance part and the optimization part. And this is the most crucial plan. And don't take it lightly, because your architecture or your data pipeline ingestion will completely depend on this one, because these are the frameworks which will help you for the data transformation. So try to get the good understanding of the main and core capabilities of each big data framework. So after the data processing plan, you would have coded all the logics, like whatever business rules your business teams has provided to you, you would have coded it like on the source data sets, whatever transformation, deduplication logics, filtration, data validations, multiple things you would have done. And the next important step would be to decide the downstream system or the storage part for the transform data. And this is also one of the important point to be considered in the data pipeline design, because based on the use cases, you will decide which data storage is the good fit for your use case. So I'll give you the examples that what kind of data storage you can pick. So far we have multiple data storage available as well. Let's say you want to process or transform the data and dump into the downstream system like the S3 and any persistent system like HDFS. And we will be also having options for the NoSQL databases. So let's say your team or the analytical team wants to query data time to time, very frequently, and ad hoc queries, right? So you will be looking for a kind of data storage which is scalable and partition tolerant as well. And here the NoSQL databases like Cassandra, MongoDB, Elasticsearch will come into the picture, because they are the good fit for the analytical queries. And let's say you are trying to dump your transform data either in the data lakes or in the data warehouse. So based on these two terminologies like data lake or data warehouse, you will decide which one needs to be picked. So let's say if you're trying to create the data lakes, you can choose the persistent storages like S3, HDFS, or anything like that. And similarly for the data warehouses, you can either pick any cloud service like the AWS Redshift or any other open source data warehousing service like Apache Hive. So that's how you can decide based on the business use case or the end analytical impact on the queries and how they gonna consume it, design it. And let's say you are processing the real-time data and somehow your dashboards are getting populated with the real-time data. So you might be also dumping data into the transactional databases like MySQL and Postgres. So based on the like batch or real-time data processing or the impact on the analytical queries, you can decide the data storage. So after deciding the data storage part, the next step would be like scheduling your jobs or the workflow management. So in the big data, so far we have most efficient workflow managers like Apache Airflow, Azkaban, and Apache NiFi. So based on the use cases, you need to decide that how you gonna schedule your pipeline and how do you wanna create the dependencies. So I'll explain it with an example. Let's say you want to derive or you want to populate a table which is named as table C, and this will be derived with the help of two data sets, let's say, which is stored in the table A and another data set is stored in the table B. And we have even created a separate pipelines for the table A and table B. And based on some transformation logics, we will be populating the table C. So here we can see this interconnection or the dependencies, like the pipeline C or the table C is completely depend on these two pipelines, table A and B. So we should definitely have some mechanism in place which can take care of these dependencies and also can help us with the schedule part as well. Because multiple times we might be running our pipelines on specific times, let's say 1 hour, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So these schedulers or workflow managers will help us with the pipeline dependency management. Now, the last step of the data pipeline design is to set up the pipeline monitoring or the governance tools. So this is also very much important because you cannot assume that 24/7 your pipeline will be running successfully. There can be multiple instances where your pipeline might get failed because of any unavoidable circumstances. So what you need to do, you need to set up some mechanism so that you can monitor the health of your pipeline or what kind of incoming data you are getting, the scale or the peak volume, so that you can identify that how my pipeline is working for a specific timestamp, and you will be also able to like log the all kind of errors or any kind of failure if it happens. And this step is really crucial because sometimes there are pipelines which are really critical. Let's take an example of financial data, right? Which is really important for any bank, even to figure out if there is any fraud transaction is happening. And even for a 1 minute or 2 minute, your pipeline is down and you are not able to get that alert or any kind of notification. That means you will be losing the customer trust. And that's why these kind of monitoring tools and governance tools will come into the picture, and we need to use it for all kind of monitoring failures, errors, the health, and these kind of tools like we have Grafana, we have Datadog, we have the PagerDuties, which will help us for these kind of pipeline monitoring. Now I will take an example of dummy created pipeline and will try to explain you that how we designed it with the help of all those points or the steps which we talked previously. So here is the pipeline, and one by one I will explain whatever points we talked about, how this pipeline is taking care of it and how you can even design these kind of pipelines. So as discussed, first thing, let's say you got all the understanding related to the data domain, you understood it. And now the second point was to choose the data source. So here what we are going to do, we are trying to pull the data from the transactional database like MySQL. Okay. So this will be our database where, let's say, some web application was there, which was dumping the data into the transactional database, and our analytical team wants to just consume this data with some transformation and they want to analyze it. So now, being a data engineer, it will be our responsibility to create this pipeline end to end along with the transformations, extraction, and the load part, right? So the database part is here. Now the next part was the data ingestion strategy. So after deciding this MySQL part, so we know this database will have multiple tables, and those tables can have timestamp columns as well. So we can use those ones in order to get the incremental data. So here the strategy we are going to follow is the incremental load. After that, there will be the data processing plan, or you can say the data processing framework, which will be doing the actual transformation. So here what we are going to do for the incremental load, we are using the Spark. So Apache Spark will be the framework which will consume this data from the MySQL database on increment basis and will apply all the business logics, the duplication logic, the filtration, the data validation, and let's say there was some join operation, group by operation, whatever is actually needed to create the transform data for the business analytics, that will be done and taken care by the Apache Spark, right? So that was about the data processing framework part. Now after that, the next step was this data storage. So here again, based on the use cases, like whether we are concerned about the data lakes or the data warehouses. So data lakes are mostly for the cold data, or there we are trying to dump the data in its raw format so that it can be used for multiple use cases and mostly for the analytical queries for very long period of time, let's say 1 month of data and 1 year of data, or even a 1 week of data. So that kind of queries, this data lake part would be efficient and we will be storing our data there. So for that one, we can use either HDFS and also AWS S3 if we are going with the cloud. Or let's talk about the data warehouses, because data warehouses are the services where we dump our transform data, actual transform data, which we have prepared in this Spark application, that will be dumped into the data warehouses. And let's say we are generating 4 or 5 transform data sets. So we need to generate it in such a way so that there is a proper relationship among them, so that we can use it with the help of the join operation to get the meaningful insights. So data warehousing services, if we want to use, we can use Apache Hive as well. And if we are going with the cloud services, then AWS Redshift is a very popular data warehousing service. Now this part is designed, our source was decided, our data processing engine was decided, and then our output storage was decided. Next point was to schedule this pipeline. And since we talked about the incremental load, so let's say what we are using Apache Airflow here, and Here we are scheduling our pipeline to get executed after every 15 minutes, right? So Apache Airflow will take care of this triggering point and will keep on monitoring the timestamp. For every 15-minute of window, it will trigger this pipeline, and this pipeline will do its job for the incremental load. And whatever data we are processing, so we need to monitor it as well, like the data governance part, which is very, very much important. So we can just transfer the logs, whatever we are generating or whatever we are doing in our Spark application, that can be transferred to some logging system, and on top of that we can use these monitoring and governance tools like the Datadog and PagerDuties. So if there is any kind of mishappening which is currently going on with our pipelines, that will be captured by these governance tools and they will notify us and we can quickly take the actions. And at the end, like the last layer will be the presentation layer, where either we can populate any dashboard which will be used by our business users for the query and the data representation part, or let's say we can provide a direct access to our data warehousing services where our end users can run their ad hoc and analytical queries and they can populate, or you can say they can get the meaningful insights of this transformed data. So that was this entire architecture, and I have covered all the steps, and this is the most generic way to design any scalable, fault tolerant and optimized data pipeline. So that's what I had for you guys in this video, and I'm pretty sure if you are an aspiring data engineer, then you would definitely take this video seriously and will be following all the important steps which I talked about for the data pipeline design.
So first is, if you don't have engineering mindset, then data engineering is going to be really hard. And when I talk about engineering mindset, that means it is all about the innovation. So in the data engineering space, when we create the pipelines, every single aspect has its own challenges. When we talk about the batch pipelining, it will have its own challenges. When we talk about real-time data pipelining, it will have its own challenges. And that is the part where your engineering excellence will come into the picture, because you need to innovate so that you can scale your data pipelines, you can even optimize it. And if you are not coming with that mindset into data engineering, then it is going to be pretty hard. And let me explain it with a clear-cut example. So let's say you are working in a company which is trying to create the scalable data pipelines. So within that organization, you are not the only team which is creating the data pipeline for your business use case. There will be multiple teams, for an example, payments team, flight booking team, and the marketing team, and everyone is completely relying on the data part. They want to analyze it, and for that stuff, we need to create different data pipelines. So let's assume you have a huge infrastructure of 100 or 500 data nodes and that big cluster where everyone is running their jobs. So each and every job will be occupying some resources as well to transform the raw data and deliver the final result. And seriously talking about the data engineering pipelines, it is not that hard and it is not a rocket science. So even if a person who is coming with a basic understanding, you can definitely ask them to create the data pipelines. But then what is the responsibility of a data engineer? There your engineering excellence will be needed, because you know the crux of whole engineering complexities. When it comes to handle the large volume of the data, you need to write the fault tolerant pipelines. When you need to handle the large scale of traffic, you need the load balancing. And when we talk about the computation part, you need to write your operation in such a way so that they are well optimized and your runtime is also very fast. So that is why if you are not coming with that kind of innovative mindset, you will feel data engineering very challenging. So as a beginner data engineer, the most challenging phase for me was to get the details about the infrastructure setup. Because when you start creating pipelines from the beginning, then you need to give the estimation to the teams that this is the amount of data we will be processing on daily basis, and this is how we want to set up our pipelines. And these pipelines will be running on some cluster. So according to the use cases and according to the processing amount, the cluster capacity will be created. And in most of the established product based companies, there will be a different DevOps team who will be taking care of these infrastructure related things. But when it comes to become a top-notch data engineer, then it's your responsibility to have an in-depth understanding of how these infrastructure related thing works. You should have a concrete understanding of the DevOps related things, that how to even grant the accesses, how to set up those server related things, and how to even do the server side coding. So that is the part which is very much important if you are stepping into the data engineering. So if you want to kickstart your journey in data engineering, make sure you are coming with the engineering mindset. Second harsh reality is you want to work as a techie, but you are not willing to understand the data domain. And I must say, this is the most crucial part of every data professional. Doesn't matter you want to become a data engineer, data scientist, data analyst. So your core responsibility is to solve mysteries around the data. So it's your responsibility to deep dive into the data domains as well. And here I will share my practical experience, which you can treat as an example. So as a beginner data engineer, the first project which I got, it was related to the aviation data domain. And before that, I had no prior experience of flight travel, but I had a really good understanding how aviation data looks like, how that flight connectivity will be happening, or we can even present on any web application with the help of the raw data. I had complete understanding what all events will be happening, even starting from booking the flight till the arrival part. So how I was able to get that information? It was completely based on the data domain understanding. And I'm honestly speaking, this is the most crucial part, even designing your data pipeline. And when I talk about data domain, let's say fintech domain, healthcare domain, banking and insurance. So I'm not telling that you need to be a pro into that data domain understanding, because this is the responsibilities of other external entities like the business analyst and the data analyst. But while designing the data pipelines, the whole understanding of different entities involved in that particular business, that's you are working in a fintech company. So you are not supposed to know everything about the accounting, that how debit credit entries actually work and how you aggregate the whole things. But you should be aware with those terminologies so that you can use that information pretty well while designing your fault tolerant data pipelines. Because before designing the data pipeline, the first part is the data analysis, and even to figure out what are the important required fields. Because in the raw systems, what happens when you start pulling the data, there will be garbage records as well, and you need to filter out, and that is the part of data cleaning and cleansing. Because when you will start processing that garbage data and you haven't applied any kind of filtration logics because you had no idea about the data itself, then your pipeline will be a complete mess. And this is something which is not expected when you will be working as a data engineer. So I will definitely suggest this part if you are moving into data engineering. So come with a tech background and technical mentality. Along with that, you should be always willing to learn new things about that data domain for which you are working. Third harsh reality, not following the best practices of software engineering. So in the beginning, for me, data engineering was a plain data engineering. Means just connect your data pipelines with few sources, apply the transformation, and just dump that transform data into the downstream system. But now this perspective has been changed. So for me now, data engineers are like software engineers who are closely working for the data. And when it comes to create the scalable and optimized data pipelines, we need to follow the modern standards. And the modern standard is CI/CD pipelines, means continuous integration and continuous deployment. So in the industry right now, there are few things which are really popular, like the versioning tools, Git, GitHub, and the microservice deployment related tools, Docker, and even the Kubernetes. And we will be having some automated frameworks as well, which can deploy our pipelines continuously. As soon as, let's say, you made some changes, you pushed it into the GitHub, there should be some mechanism. For an example, the Jenkins, which is really popular for continuous deployment. So as soon as your changes are done, instantly your code will be deployed into the test environment or the dev environment, and finally in the production environment. So this is the part which you need to focus as a data engineer as well if you want to upskill and you want to become a top-notch data engineer. And another best practice is writing the test cases for your pipeline. because your pipeline will be consuming some data, and based on the scale of the data which you might be consuming at given point of time, your pipeline might also get failed, because there are possibilities that the data which you are supposed to get, it is corrupted, and if you haven't taken care it in your pipeline, then again you will be getting the wrong output. That is why when we start building our pipelines, there are multiple stages of testings as well, like unit testing, integration testing, functional testing, and once all these testing parts are done, we will be doing the data quality checks as well. And even before that, in the beginning, there will be data validation related steps will be involved. So these are the overall best practices software engineering folks are definitely using while creating their applications. But now this has become a standard in the industry. So doesn't matter which profile you belong to, but when you are creating something which is related to the realistic products, be it the data or anything, you need to follow these kind of standards, like creating the CI/CD pipelines and having an in-depth understanding of these kind of tools and tech frameworks. And the fourth harsh reality is you are not flexible enough to work on different tool and tech frameworks based on the requirement. And this is my personal experience as well. When I started working in my first company, they were using their internal tools for building the data pipelines and the data computation. And that was the point which was my good experience as well and the bad experience. Why good experience? Because I wanted to learn. I wanted to see how this whole big data ecosystem works, and that experience was pretty good. But when it comes to the tools and tech frameworks, that internal tool was something which was not outside that company, and that was the biggest concern for me. And after that, I took a decision to move into different organizations so that I can get an exposure of those tools and tech stacks which are the standard for the data engineering. And this is the point where you need to be flexible enough as well, because as a data engineer, if you are expecting any company which can give you everything like good tech stack, good use case, good project, then it is not going to happen. At least you have to compromise on something, and this is the part you have to have that kind of flexibility. There will be multiple companies who might be working on their own internal tools. Best example, my Amazon experience. So Amazon was completely on AWS. So whatever pipeline I was building, for that I was using the cloud agnostic tools, the AWS services, and they had their few internal tools as well. So I cannot complain on that part to my team or my manager that I am not interested of using internal tools, because that is the part of your day-to-day activities. But you should focus on your priorities, that there should be tech stacks you need to focus to become a top-notch data engineer. And other aspect, let's say there will be companies who might be focusing more on the on-premises and open source tech stack. The best example is the startup companies. They cannot invest too much onto the cloud solutions or these things, because that is a costly operation. So they will be focusing more on these kind of open source solution. So as a data engineer, you should have a good understanding of all those open source frameworks like Apache Hadoop, Apache Spark, Airflow, Flink, NiFi, Flume, and Apache Kafka, and many more. So that is how you will be able to adopt the new changes which will keep on coming, because technology is something which is changing every now and then, and that is the point where you have to be really flexible to adopt any kind of change. And the last harsh reality is too much hate for data governance and monitoring part. And this is the common across the IT industry. Doesn't matter you are a software engineer or a data engineer or a site reliability engineer. This data governance and monitoring part is very much important for any product and for any kind of company, because they want to give the smoothest customer experience, and for that they need to handle the massive scale of traffic at any particular point of time. And as a data engineer, since you will be working on huge volume of the data, so the way you are creating the pipelines, you need to take that whole ownership. At the end of designing the pipeline, you should have those kind of automated mechanism so that you can capture all activities which are happening with your pipelines, because there should be some unusual activities which should work like a red flag, that yes, this is the time we need to take some action, else our pipeline might get failed. and that is the part where data governance and monitoring come into the picture. And as an engineer, we always hate this part because this is somehow related to the on-call process, which you might have heard for different companies, at least for the FAANG companies, that they have a on-call culture, and the monitoring and governance part is actually related to that. So my personal opinion for this one, yes, we can hate this part, but understand it from the practical perspective. If you have created something, then you are the owner of it. So whatever will be happening with that pipeline, nobody else will come into the picture and will fix it for you. Else, you need to design your pipeline in such a way that there are zero failure, which cannot happen. There will be chances of failure. So set up that mechanism that alerts are raised on time and you are able to monitor it properly. And for that, we have different kind of tools as well. You should have a really good understanding of like pager duties, how to set up that one, and the Datadog matrices. And you cannot avoid this data governance part. This is my personal experience. You can do your best to minimize these kind of failures so that your life is also happy as a data engineer. So these were the few harsh realities of being a data engineer, but every coin has two sides, so does data engineering. And I hope with the help of this video, you can clearly understand the challenges which you might face as a data engineer.
So let's proceed with the interview process. So as I said, the first round will be the online assessment and you can say the kind of coding round. So now I'll talk about that one, what will be included and how you can crack this round. So in the online assessment round, these companies will be sending you a test link, and that can be on different platforms like the HackerRank, HackerEarth, and many other popular platforms. So there, mostly for the data engineering round, as I said in my roadmap videos as well, that you don't need to focus much on the hard level of the coding questions like easy, medium till medium level. And this entire online assessment will take approximately 1 hour or 1 hour 30 minutes. And there will be two sections. First section, in that part, there can be one or at max two coding questions, and that would be till medium level and you need to solve it. There will be multiple test cases as well, right? So try to write your solution in such a way that like your maximum test cases are getting passed, and that's how like the entire score will be calculated. And the second section, sometimes like based on my experiences, I have seen either companies will give you a couple of SQL questions, right? They will give you a proper problem statement with the table schema and some dummy data, and there will be some problem statement written that for this particular data set, you need to write this SQL query, right? And whatever will be the expected output, it should be matched with your query output. Once that will be done, then like you can submit your queries, because in that case, it will be the successful query or you have written the correct query. So 2-3 SQL question you can expect. Sometimes, let's say companies are not focusing on the SQL part in the screening round, or you can say this online assessment round, then they can probably give you some multiple choice questions as well, which will be related to the big data fundamentals like the Hadoop, Spark, or related to shell scripting, right? These kind of basic MCQs they can give you. So that will be the thing which will be included in this online assessment round. And based on my experience, I would like to suggest that when you appear in these like online assessment, make sure you are not trying to copy anything from the Google or anything like, because that will come into the plagiarism part and you will be disqualified from this round. And focus on the timing part as well, right? Let's say you are taking a lot of time for your coding questions to solve and you are stuck on one particular problem and it is giving wrong output, then don't invest your time for that particular solution. Move on to the MCQs or SQL questions or whatever you can solve quickly. So that is the secret tip which you can follow to crack this round. Now, once you clear your online assessment, or you can say the screening round, you will be moving into the next interview rounds, which will be a combination of technical plus design plus the behavioral rounds. So first, let's talk about the first technical round. It will consist majorly the problem solving plus SQL related things. So in the first technical round, the major focus will be on your problem solving, like little bit of the DSA and how you approach the problem, and the SQL related questions as well. So I will elaborate it more, that what would be expected from your side and how you can crack this round. So majorly the interviewer will focus on basic or let's say the medium level of coding question. They will give you a problem to solve, and while solving this problem, right, your first thought should be to get all the requirements, right? Let's say the interviewer has given you a problem statement related to array. Try to ask the what would be the maximum limit of input numbers. It will be a positive number, negative number, or anything, right? Any test case you can think of, try to ask those things, clarify it beforehand so that you can move into the right direction while solving that particular coding question. And the best thing about this round is that interviewers actually want to see that how you approach to a particular problem. They won't be expecting that you are accurately writing that particular code or it is 100% executable. Even if you are using the right data structure, right algorithm with best time and space complexities, and you are not even able to code it 100%, but you are able to narrate your approach, that would be sufficient, right? Now, the best secret tip to crack this interview round is think out loud. And I'm pretty sure many of you might be thinking, what is this terminology? And I will definitely explain it for you. So, think out loud means whenever you are narrating your approach, or let's say you are trying to solve a particular problem, don't just silently write your approach, keep on narrating as well. Why? Because interviewers are very helpful. They always want you to hire for a particular job role. So when you are narrating your approach, so in that case, what will happen? The interviewer can pick that if you are in the right track or wrong track. Or let's say he or she thinks that you are on a wrong track, then they will try to help you with some indirect hints as well, right? But it's your responsibility to catch those hints and move on to the right track. So that was about the problem solving and how efficiently you can crack this round. But there will be another component of it, which will be the SQL part. So for the SQL, the interviewer will give you a schema as well. You can say some dummy data set and a particular problem, and you need to write a query for that. And again, follow the same thing like the think out loud, like what kind of functions you are going to use, what would be your approach to solve that particular SQL query. And the important things from the interview perspective, you need to focus on, make sure you are practicing the queries related to joins, the group bys, the window functions, which is very, very much important. And that's how these all things will be included in this particular round, which is your first technical round after the online assessment. And one important point to mention here, like whenever you will be interviewing for top tech companies, so mostly each round would be an elimination round. So let's say you are not able to perform well in any of the round, you will be disqualified from there and you won't be selected or you won't be moving forward for the next interview round. So make sure you are trying your best in each and every round so that you can move further and crack it till the very end. Now let's talk about the second technical interview round, which will consist two things. Again, the SQL part plus the your understanding related to big data frameworks and whatever you have done so far in the big data domain. Now let me elaborate it more, that what would be expected from your side in this interview round and what kind of questions those interviewers can ask. So why again I mentioned the SQL, because in my roadmap videos I mentioned this part as well. Be it any of the data engineering profile or any of the profile in the big data domain, SQL is something which is really, really important, and it will hold 30 to 35% of weightage in your interview process. So that's why even in the second technical interview round, the interviewers can ask you the questions related to SQL, and it will again revolve around those same topics, the join related queries, complex subqueries, case when related things, or the group by statement and the window functions. So make sure you are practicing all these things practically and even trying to solve the complex queries as well, because interviews are not only about the simple SQL queries, it will be like more towards the advanced SQL related queries as well. Now the second part of this interview round, which is the understanding of big data, their fundamentals, the framework understanding, and that is something which is really, really important. So how those interviewers can ask these kind of questions? So that will be majorly focused on your understanding related to the architecture of any particular big data frameworks. Let's talk about the Hadoop. Let's talk about the Spark, right? So they will try to test how well you know this particular big data framework, whether you have worked on it practically or not. And the Common questions are, let's say they are trying to ask questions related to Spark. So they would like to know, do you know how to optimize any Spark query, or do you know how to optimize any Spark related application in terms of the function, in terms of the processing, in terms of the resources. So this is the general idea, like how this happens. And there will be multiple questions related to Hadoop architecture, like what is HDFS, how it works, how the MapReduce processing work, how this resource manager allocates the resource to different kind of applications. Similarly, like they can ask, let's say, what is the difference between file formats, ORC, Parquet, Avro, and many other fundamental related things. So what is the best secret tip to crack this interview round? And that is, don't be fake. And I will elaborate it. What does I actually mean it? So when I said this part, that don't be fake, that means whatever you have mentioned in your resume in terms of the technical skill set, be it any framework or anything, it should be authentic. Because let's say for the sake of the interview shortlisting or resume shortlisting, you mention those frameworks which you haven't used or which you didn't use in your projects or anything like that. So what will happen, let's say the interviewer start picking those frameworks from your resume and start asking questions around that, then that means you won't be able to answer and you are decreasing your chances to select in that particular round. So that's why just be authentic. Whatever you have used so far, deep dive into it, get the complete understanding, not just from the theory perspective, the architecture, how to practically use it, what are the proper trade-offs, different comparisons between different tech frameworks, and that's how you will be able to clear this second technical interview round. Now let's talk about the third technical interview round. And this third interview round will consist like three things, and that is not mandatory that all three things will be asked. So interviewer can ask the data modeling related question, or the questions related to your projects, or any random question related to pipeline design. So in this round, majorly the interviewers will be focusing on the design, like how well you know to create the data pipelines and how efficiently you can create any data model. Or let's say you have worked on any particular big data project. So interviewer would like to deep dive into it and understand what was your contribution and how you did that project. So I will explain each and every component of it one by one, that what kind of questions you can expect from the interviewers. Let's say interviewer want to ask any question related to data modeling. So in this part, you need to focus more on the data warehousing concepts, because the practical questions could be anything. Let's say interviewer can ask, can you design a data model for any ride application or any food delivery application? And honestly, I remember one of my recent interviews where that particular interviewer asked me to design a data model, or you can say data warehouse for Arogya Setu app, right? Which being used for the like vaccination details and that slot booking, right? So these kind of practical questions will be there. So make sure your data modeling and data warehousing related concepts are crystal clear. Now the second aspect of this design round, let's say the interviewer want to check how well you know to design these data pipelines, the proper ETL processing, extraction, transformation, and load. So in that case, the interviewer might give you a problem which they are trying to solve in their particular company, or any hypothetical situation, that let's say we have this particular use case, this will be the source data and these will be the business logic, and that would be the end, or you can say the downstream part. So you need to design this particular pipeline, and make sure when you approach this design kind of question, the secret tip to crack it, like you are able to get all the requirements, plus you are considering these two factors, the fault tolerance and the scalability. So the fault tolerance and scalability is the very important point in any of your data pipeline design, because interviewers would be like expecting how well you understand the high volume of the data, its variety, its velocity. So if you are designing your pipeline in such a way which is not scalable, then for the peak volume of the data, it would be completely braked and it won't be an efficient solution. So that's why interviewer would be expecting, and they will try to notice whether you have covered these kind of things in your pipeline design, and also like related to dependency management, workflow part, the data backfilling. These are the some important terminologies which you need to take care while designing these kind of fault tolerant and scalable data pipelines. So the third aspect of this particular interview round could be the discussion around the projects. So how this round will go ahead for the project discussion, the interviewer would be really interested to know more about your project. Let's say you have created some project in your past, or let's say you were working in a company and there you work in big data related projects. So interviewer will ask the complete problem statement, that what you were trying to solve and what kind of data volume you were processing there, what was your contribution, what was the architecture, what was the design, what were the challenges did you face, and what was your contribution is the most important thing, right? So that would be for the project discussion part. And there is one really important secret tip to crack this particular interview round, is be authentic in your resume for the project perspective as well. And why, I will explain it. Because sometimes what happened, let's say we were working as a team on a particular project, right? And our contribution, let's say, was only for some specific module, and it was just, let's say, 10 and 20%. Still, we try to mention those kind of projects in our resume. So what will happen if you are not understanding that project completely? So you won't be able to answer questions related to design, architecture, scalability, and other aspects. So let's say whenever you are preparing your resume, right, for specifically to tackle these project related discussion, make sure you are mentioning those projects where your contribution was very high, and you know every aspect of it, like the complete end-to-end things related to that particular project. What was the use case, what are the ins and outs of that project. So that is the most important secret tip to crack your design related interviews if the interviewer is asking questions related to your projects. Now I'm going to talk about the most important interview round, and this is the last step of your entire interview process as well, right? And this round is all about the hiring manager behavioral round, and in the FAANG level companies we call it the bar raiser. And we as a candidate think that this round is pretty easy to crack, but actually it is not. And why, I will explain it. So whenever we are concerned about our technical interviews, right, so we know there are resources available for that, right? We can Google something, we can find few videos or some blogs, and we can prepare about these things. But the hiring manager round, behavioral or bar raiser, is all about your behavior. This hiring manager or behavioral round, or you can say the bar raiser round, is all about your thought process for a particular situation, right? So that would be the main expectation. And honestly speaking, this round is definitely not that easy to crack, because the interviewer, which might be your hiring manager, like who is particularly hiring for that particular round, or the bar raiser, like any person from the different team who is trying to check your fitment into the team, right? Because when you work in a company, right, you work as a team. So every manager or the entire company, like whosoever is hiring you, would like to check whether you are a good fit for that particular team or not. So that's why the interviewer will try to put some random and very hypothetical situations in front of you, and will try to check your positive mindset and how you're gonna approach that particular problem, right? So I will also give you some problem statements which were asked to me in the interview rounds. So I remember a couple of hypothetical situation questions which were asked to me. So for an example, let's say as a team you are working on a particular project, and your manager assigned a task related to design, like there's a problem statement and you need to come up with a design, and same task was assigned to 2-3 members of that particular team, and everybody came up with an idea. So like how would you convince your other teammates that whatever design you have prepared is the best one, right? What would be your approach, and how would you try to convince them? And second hypothetical situation could be, let's your manager assign a task to you, and obviously there will be a particular deadline for that, and because of any reason, any unavoidable circumstances, you are not able to meet those deadlines. Then how you gonna communicate this thing to your manager, your end users, or your leadership? Because When you work in an organization, this communication part becomes very important, because you are owning a particular project and you need to communicate every single update about it, be the timelines, deadlines, and whatever it is. So that's why the hiring manager or the bar raisers would be interested to check these kind of thought process, that if this kind of random situation in front of you, how you are going to react and how you are going to solve it with a positive mindset. Now, the best secret tip to crack this interview round is be authentic and try to recall your past experience before appearing into the hiring manager round. So why I'm telling this point, that recall your past experience, because again it is all about these situations. So hiring managers can definitely ask questions related to your past experience with different companies and the managers and the relationship with the colleagues, right? So even before appearing into this hiring manager round, make sure you are able to recall your past experience and always try to put your thought in a positive mindset. Let's say the hiring manager asks, tell me about your experience with the past company or any situation which was not suitable for you. So try to put it in a very diplomatic and positive way, not just do a bad mouthing in front of the current manager or anything like that. That would definitely create a negative impact. So this is something which is really important, and this trick has always worked for me, because knowing about your past will give you the idea what kind of random situations you have faced so far. So before appearing into the interview, take a note of it and try to prepare a story around it. Because during the interview, if you are taking 1, 2 or 5 minutes to think about something, then interviewer will definitely get to know that you are trying to be fake and you are trying to frame a story, not a authentic story. So that's why this becomes very important. And there is one very much important thing about this hiring manager round, is that it is very much important for you as well. Because in the hiring manager round, that manager will be taking your interviews. So this is the best opportunity for you as well to ask as many questions you can, right? Let's say you want to understand more about the team, ask those questions to that manager. And you want to understand about the project, tech stack, or any questions related to work-life balance, culture, this is the best opportunity for you to utilize this hiring manager round. Because at the end, this round will definitely help you to take the decision whether you should go for this particular company or not. And that can only happen if you are utilizing this round in a particular efficient manner, and if you are not asking any questions related to company, projects, and the tech stack, then you are definitely losing the opportunity to know the actual truth of the particular team and the project. Now that was all about the entire interview process. I have done the breakdown and explained every single thing about the individual rounds and how you can crack it. But the most important part is getting the interview calls. And here your resume will play a very important role. And based on my experience, I have seen folks are losing multiple good opportunities because of a bad resume. And today I will be also focusing on some of the best resume making tips which you can use while creating your resume, and it will definitely increase your chances to get shortlisted for the multiple job opportunities. So the first thing you should focus while preparing your resume, that it should be at max 1 pager. So there is a famous saying, if even you are a CTO of a company, your resume should be of 1 page. And I will explain why. So whenever we talk about the resumes, right, it becomes very important to keep it very crisp and concise. And this is the point where lots of people make mistake. Even if they don't have a much relevant experience, or let's say much relevant content to show in their resume, still they like keep it 2 pages or this kind of length, which is definitely not acceptable. So how you can optimize these things? So first thing, try to focus on like avoid unnecessary stuff or avoid unnecessary details. I have seen resumes where folks are mentioning their mother's name, father's name, date of birth, the particular address, right, which is definitely not at all required. So in the header, you should simply mention your name, your current job title, active phone number, active email ID, and if you are trying to add any link, for an example, the GitHub repository or the LinkedIn profile link, right? These would be the important things which should be included in the header. And apart from that, there is no need to put any unnecessary extra information. Now the second part, which is very much important, the mentioning of technical skill. I have seen people mentioning their technical skills like just comma separated. Let's say they have worked on 20 or 30 skill sets, everything they are mentioning with comma separated part, which is definitely not acceptable. Because let's assume there is a recruiter and she is trying to, let's say, scan 150 resumes. So how she will get to know that what are specific technology domain you have worked on? So how you can highlight those things? Let's say there were 20-25 skill sets, so you can categorize it. Let's say you worked on 3 particular languages, Python, Java and Scala. Try to create a heading named as the programming under the technical skill set heading and mention those 3 programming languages in front of it. Let's say you worked on multiple databases, Cassandra, HBase, MySQL. Create a heading named as database and mention it in front of it. Let's say you worked on multiple big data frameworks, Hive, Spark, Flink. Create a heading named as big data frameworks and put it in that way. So that's how you can beautify it and it look very decent, well categorized, and recruiter can like quickly identify what all technology domains you have worked so far. Now another very much important part, that is mentioning your work experience. So this is the very important part where lots of people make mistake and again include unnecessary details in their projects, which is again not required. And why? Because in the projects, what happens, we try to elaborate it like as much as we can, and we think this is the best way to convey every information about our projects, which is definitely a wrong idea. So how you can optimize it? First, try to mention those important projects where your contribution was very high, and it's not required to mention like 10-12 projects. Let's say you are having 3 or 5 years of experience and you worked on like 10-12 projects so far, so there is no need to mention all those projects. Try to mention 3-4 projects where your contribution was very high, you know all the ins and outs of that particular project, and everything you can explain about the architecture and design. So if you are comfortable, just mention those projects and try to put it in a decreasing order, like your current company and the latest project you are working on, and similarly in the decreasing order. Now talking about the what should be the explanation part of the each project. So always try to put like 2 to 3 liners explanation for each of the project. There is no need to write a paragraph, because in the interviews the interviewer will definitely try to ask the questions around your project, and like he or she won't be reading your entire resume to get the details about the projects you have worked on. So there is no need to put that extra paragraph related information, just 2-3 lines for each project. And your words, your sentences should be very crisp, and also try to highlight the important points in your project explanation, because numbers speaks more than words. So let's say you worked on a project where you optimized something and there the manual effort reduced from 100% to 50%. So these are the matrices you should definitely highlight and it will catch the attention. Similarly, let's say you solved a particular critical business problem, try to highlight it, bold or italic, whatever you want to do, right? So that's how you can save a really good amount of space in your particular resume. And in order to create like single page resume, right now the best format is the columnar one, because that way you will be able to utilize the left side of your resume, the header in a well manner, and the right pan for the project explanation. And the last but not the least and very much important, like highlighting your achievements as well, because multiple times we ignore our achievements because we think those are not worth mentioning in the resume. But honestly speaking, you should definitely do that. And why your achievements actually highlight you as a better personality, because recruiters will also get to know that you are someone who is just not into the technology, but apart from the technology you are also following your passion or anything. Let's say you are a content creator or you created something, you can mention it as a achievement. And similarly, let's say you are giving tech talks and you are helping the communities, or any achievement which you have got so far. It could be like winning a hackathon, organizing some hackathons, or these kind of tech talks, plus multiple other achievements. Please try to put it in your resume. It will definitely create a really good impact. So this is how you can optimize your resume, and it will definitely will become a single page resume, and it will increase your chances to get multiple job opportunities. So in 2022, if I could restart my career as a data engineer, then definitely I would start it from my college life itself. So any of you who don't know about my college life, first I completed my bachelor's in computer science in 2014, and then after that I cracked NIMSET with all India rank 43 and got admitted into NIT Allahabad for the MCA program. So for me, the challenge was like, I was just coming from that government university where like just professors was not coming for the classes, and that was the main challenge, because I was not able to learn, and also I was not self-motivated to explore things right by my own, that what is actually computer science and how can I make my career into it. And there was no support system, and there was no support from the college itself, or you can say a good learning environment. That was the first challenge. So after my graduation, you can say I was still zero in the computer science part. So while this MCA program, what happened, I had to start everything from the zero, be it the coding part, be it the fundamentals of computer science. I had to compete with the BTech students as well. So that was the biggest challenge one more time. So what actually happened in my college life, because I was coming from that kind of background, so I focused a lot on my college curriculum. I focused on the programming part. I focused on the fundamentals like the DBMS, the operating system, networking, these kind of subjects, and was too much into the theoretical aspect. And that was the main drawback, because as a student, my first priority should have been to focus more on the dev skills as well, along with the fundamentals, because that is something which is actually required in the industry. Without the dev skills and without exploring the new fields in the IT sectors, we cannot make the good decision about our career. So there was so much of lack of awareness and lack of dev skills, definitely. And why lack of awareness? Because I was not exploring the things which are actually needed in the industry. I was not exploring the recent trends in the IT, like the DevOps, the big data, the cyber security, Android, iOS. I was thinking web development is the future, and the backend, front-end development, this is the only option left for me. And honestly speaking, during my college part, what happened, I was just copying the projects from the GitHubs, or just referring the projects of my seniors. And why I was doing it? Because I had to get the good grades, and which was definitely the bad idea, because the dev skills is something which you learn by your own. You cannot learn it by copying the things from somewhere else. So 3 key takeaways from my college life. First, I was stick to the college curriculum only. Second, I didn't acquire relevant dev skills. Third, I was only focused on software engineering, and I didn't explore new domains in the IT sector. So if you are also a college student, then make sure you are not repeating these kind of mistakes. So finally in 2017, my campus placement started, and after getting multiple rejections from big tech firms like Amazon, Paytm, Adobe, Zap Labs, finally I was able to get a job offer from a service-based company, which is Opera Solution. And 2017 was the time when I started my career as a software engineer. And that phase honestly was way too challenging for me, because as I said, in the college, I didn't focus on my dev skill. I just focused on the college curriculum. So even I started my career as a software engineer, but I didn't know what exactly backend development is, and the front-end development, how to even code it properly. So that starting 6-8 months was very challenging for me. And that time I realized that I am looking for something else. Software engineering is not a profile which is best suited for me. And the good thing with my first organization was that was a service-based company. So they were working for multiple clients, and there were different segments as well. few products they were trying to deliver specifically for the software engineering. There were few teams which were working on the big data domain, and one good quality about me is that I love interacting with new people, and same thing I followed in my first organization as well. So during the lunch times or during any event, I interacted with those people who were actually working on different projects and different domain. So that was the first time when I was introduced to the big data, and prior to that I had no knowledge about it. And as I said, even in my college time, I didn't explore these job profiles or any new trends which is going in the IT industry. And one important advice for everyone: nowadays, your networking is your strength, because IT domains are quite wide and you need to connect with different people who are working in different domain, and that's how you will be able to get the idea about what is going on in the industry. And sometimes those things can be very fascinating and you would also like to explore it, and that's exactly happened with me. So based on my interest, although I started with the data engineering profile, but the main challenge was to find the crisp roadmap, because back in 2017 there was no resource as such available for the data engineering, be it any particular course or the YouTube video, any blog or any website. There was nothing as such available, and I was struggling a lot to find the key skills which are related to data engineering, what all things I need to focus on, and what is the exact path which can enhance my skill set specifically for the data engineering. So this is the thing I would like to advise everyone, and especially aspiring data engineers. Whenever you are starting your career with the data engineering, so first you need to prepare a very crisp roadmap. Try to list down all those things which you need to cover in this data engineering field in the sequence wise, starting from the programming, then the big data related fundamentals, and whatever is needed to advance your career in the data engineering. Try to create that crisp roadmap so that you can follow it sequentially and you are not wasting your time into the unnecessary stuffs. So in my college time, I was not that good with programming. So starting one and a half year, I focused too much onto the programming. I was following few pro coders in my college who were too much into the competitive programming. I was also trying to follow their path, and that's why I was too much into the coding. And even after completing my college, starting 6-8 months, I was into my college zone, and again unnecessarily just leaving my office work and focusing on to the coding challenges like the CodeChef, HackerRank, and just trying to solve those problems. Although the idea should have been like I should have focused more on my projects or whatever tasks were assigned to me, or even to explore the skills related to the data engineering. But still I was too much into the programming, which was definitely a big mistake. Because there is one important thing which I would like to highlight. In the data engineering domain, you are not supposed to be a pro coder. Pro coder as in, like, you don't need to invest your too much of time into the competitive programming and all. Even if you are good with your DSA fundamentals, and if you are able to solve the problem, that too till the medium level, that is completely fine, and you will be definitely able to crack the good of the good companies. So instead of focusing too much onto the programming part, ideally I should have focused on my data engineering skill sets, which are very important and highly demanded in the companies. So those skill sets are like Hadoop, Apache Spark, Apache Hive, Flink, Kafka, transactional databases, NoSQL databases, and a very good hands-on on the SQL part. So these are the important skill sets which I should have focused when I started my career as a data engineer. But definitely that was a mistake, and I learned from it. And the time I realized it, I instantly started exploring these important skill sets and got a good grip on it. And that's how I was even able to enhance my data engineering skills. So before 2020, I was not able to crack any of the FAANG company, especially Amazon, because that was my favorite company. And also I was rejected by Amazon twice, first in 2017, second in 2019, but finally I made into Amazon in 2020. But what actually went wrong before 2020? So the main reason for that, lack of good projects on my portfolio. And why that was happening? Because in the starting of my career, the 2017 to 2020, I was very much focused on the theoretical aspects of big data engineering skill sets. Like I talked about Spark, Hadoop, Hive. What I did, I was exploring these skill sets, and that too from the theoretical aspect. Let's say how Spark architecture work and how we can actually code in the Spark. I was not trying to understand the crux of these frameworks, and especially what I should say, I was not focusing on learning by doing. So ideally, when I started learning these skill sets important which are related to the data engineering, so that was the reason I was failing in the interviews before 2020. Although I was able to crack initial technical rounds like the coding round and the SQL round, but I was not able to crack design or project related discussion because I had nothing to show on my resume, or you can say the portfolio. Nothing to show as in like the challenging projects or something which is very very relevant to the data engineering. I didn't had those kind of things on my resume, and that is why I was not able to create that kind of impact in my interviews. So ideally, what should I have done? As soon as I started learning these data engineering skill set, I should have created good projects around that one. Doesn't matter a full-fledged production level application, but at least something which I can use and I can play around it, that how Spark actually works, what are the optimization techniques, and how can even create a like end-to-end working data pipeline using different components of the data engineering. So now you might be thinking what kind of projects you need to work on. So I would like to recommend one thing to all the aspiring data engineers. So whenever you start working on your data engineering skill sets, try to make projects around batch data pipelines and real-time data pipelines. And my special recommendation will be real-time data pipelines because those are challenging to create as well and full of learnings. And most important part, in the interviews, at least based on my latest experience, in the design rounds, interviewers will mostly focus on the real-time related design question. So if you are working on these kind of projects, that would be really helpful. So now let's talk about something which is very, very important, which I could have focused on if I need to restart my career as a data engineer. So before 2020, I didn't focus much on the cloud part. Although it was in the market, everybody was talking about it. Companies were moving from on-premises to cloud part, but still I was the one who was not aware about it, or you can say I was not motivated enough to explore this cloud part. So before 2020, till I joined the Amazon, I didn't work practically on the cloud part, and I definitely regret about it, because this cloud part is something which has become a very very important skill set for a data engineer if you are targeting good product based companies. So if you are good at any cloud platform, it can be AWS, it can be Azure, it can be the GCP. So if you are good at it, then definitely you will stand out from the crowd and you will get a great advantage in the interview shortlisting and during your interviews as well. So if I could restart my career as a data engineer, then cloud is something which I would like to pick as soon as possible. And also I would like to clarify one doubt which I keep on getting from the audience. Let's say if I know one specific cloud platform, for example AWS, and other company in their job description they have mentioned about Azure or GCP. So whether they will shortlist my profile or they will hire me or not. So answer is yes, because companies are not specifically looking for any specific cloud platform. If you know about it, that's good to have. But what they are looking for, whether you are expert of the cloud or not, because every cloud platform has created different kind of services, few common services as well, but their implementation on their platform is different. So, and you can learn it very very easily. That's why you don't need to care about it. If you know AWS, then you cannot crack the interviews of those companies which are requiring the Azure part. So the combination of technical skills plus soft skills is something which will make you a good engineer, because companies are not looking for a pro coder or an engineer only. They are looking for someone who can lead the projects, and you need to build those kind of leadership qualities, and that's how the soft skill is something which will play a very very important role. And I will tell you why. When you will work on a project in a particular company, so that is something which will require the involvement with the clients, and you need to communicate all the things to your clients. You need to get the requirements as well. You need to talk to your leadership. You need to talk to your stakeholders. And soft skill is not always about the verbal communication. It is about how you write your emails, how you communicate the information, how you document the thing. So everything is very, very much important when you will be working in good companies. They have a very, very managed process, and you need to take that responsibility so that you can drive the project till the end. And this soft skill part is something which you need to work on, because there is no one who can teach you all these things together, and you need to focus on your personality development. And I will explain that how I worked on my communication skills and how I improved my soft skills. So in my first company, that was actually a service based company, and I found a very, very great advantage of working in service based companies. Why? Because you will get a chance to interact with multiple clients, sometimes client related to the healthcare, sometimes client related to the fintech, sometimes client related to the pharmaceutical industries. So when you interact with your clients, you actually get to know their aspects of business. You try to improve your communication. You try to listen them, right? How they are speaking, how they are communicating. And that's how you will try to learn that part as well. Initially, that was very challenging for me, because in my college, I was not good at the speaking in English and even writing the things properly in the English with proper grammar and all. And that was the reason I was very, very hesitant in the beginning to take participation in the meetings, or you can say in the client meetings or leadership meetings. And you need to get that kind of courage. You need to get that kind of confidence. In the beginning, you will feel ashamed in the public while speaking, but that is completely fine. You need to ignore it. You need to improve yourself. So just feel that much motivated so that you can face that amount of public and you can improve your soft skill. So that's how even I improved it. More participation, more learnings. So these were the mistakes and challenges which I faced in my college life and in my professional journey. I wish I could go back in time and fix it, but unfortunately I can't. So I hope you guys won't make these kind of mistakes which I did, and that's why we created this video for all the aspiring data engineers. And if you find it informative, make sure to like the video. And if you are new to our channel, then hit the subscribe button and press the notification icon. And if you have any query and any question related to data engineering, feel free to put it in the comment section. We will take it up in the next video.